Story number 1. I never imagined that a simple camping trip with my friends would turn into the most harrowing experience of my life. It all started as an adventure, a break from our monotonous college routine. There were 5 of us: me, Sam, Josh, Tina, Mark, and Lisa. We were headed to a secluded forest, known for its stunning views and serene lake. Little did we know, it was also home to a horror we couldn't have imagined. We arrived on a sunny Friday afternoon, the forest greeting us with its cool shade and a symphony of birds. We set up our tents near the lake, its water glistening like a mirror under the afternoon sun. The first day was blissful, full of laughter, swimming, and stories. As night fell, we gathered around the campfire, roasting marshmallows under a sky littered with stars. It was perfect, but not for long. The next morning we discovered something unsettling. A circle of small, bare footprints surrounding our campsite. Could be some local kids messing around, Mark suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. We were deep in the woods, miles from the nearest town. The thought of children wandering here was disconcerting. Despite the eerie discovery, we decided to hike further into the woods. The forest was dense, a labyrinth of towering trees and whispering leaves. As we ventured deeper, we stumbled upon a strange sight. Dolls crudely made from twigs and leaves hanging from the branches. Their acorn faces stared at us with hollow eyes. Lisa, always the brave one, took pictures, trying to lighten the mood, but the unease among us was palpable. By the time we returned to camp, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. We tried to enjoy another night by the fire, but the forest seemed different now, alive with unseen eyes watching us. Josh was the first to notice it, a faint giggle, almost imperceptible, coming from the darkness. We strained our ears, but it was gone as quickly as it had come. The real terror began that night. The giggling returned, louder, closer, and it wasn't alone. They emerged from the shadows, children, a dozen or so, with wild eyes and unkempt hair. They stood at the edge of our campfire's light, silent, just staring with unnerving smiles. Tina, ever the caring soul, asked if they were lost, but they didn't respond. Instead, they began their game, a macabre version of hide-and-seek. They would vanish into the darkness, only to reappear suddenly, each time closer, their smiles growing wider, more disturbing. Panic surged through us. We grabbed our gear, desperately trying to leave, but the children were everywhere, blocking our path, their giggles echoing through the trees. We were trapped in their twisted game. The night turned into a blur of terror. Josh was the first to be taken. They surrounded him, their laughter a chilling chorus as they dragged him into the darkness. His screams still haunt me. I ran, not daring to look back. Behind me, the sounds of my friends being chased, their pleas for help, filled the night. I found a hiding spot, a small thicket, where I'm now crouched, writing this in the faint glow of my phone. These children, if you can even call them that, are something else, something beyond natural. They hunt us for sport, their innocence a grotesque mask for something far more sinister. Story number 2. It was supposed to be just another adventure. 5 of us, all hungry for a thrill, led by Sarah, the queen of hiking. We'd tackled trails before, but nothing like this one in the Appalachian woods. It was a monster of a trail, twisted and wild, but we were ready. Or so we thought. Day 1 was a blast. We laughed, shared stories, and our footsteps were light. But as the sun dipped low, the mood shifted. A thick fog crept in, swallowing the path and blurring the trees into ghostly figures. "It's just fog," Sarah said, trying to sound confident. But her eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. Our tech-savvy buddy Mike pulled out his GPS, but his brow furrowed. "Guys, it's not working." We huddled around, watching as the screen glitched and died. That's when the first whisper reached my ears, a soft, unintelligible murmur that seemed to come from the trees themselves. I shivered, telling myself it was just the wind. We decided to set up camp, hoping the fog would lift by morning. But night in the forest is a different beast. The darkness was thick, and every snap of a twig sent jolts of fear through us. We tried to sleep, but it was fitful at best. Then came the shadows. I saw one flit between the trees, just at the edge of the campfire light. "Did you see that?" I whispered to Alex, who lay beside me. He nodded, his face pale in the firelight. We sat up, scanning the darkness, but the shadow was gone. Morning brought no relief. The fog was a relentless shroud, and without our GPS, we were blind. Sarah tried to keep us moving, but every turn looked the same. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to be calling us, luring us deeper into the forest. Hunger and thirst began to gnaw at us. Our supplies were limited, and fear made it worse. "We're going in circles," Jess murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. It was true. The same broken branch, the same rock formation. We'd passed them before. Panic was setting in. I could see it in everyone's eyes. That's when we heard it. A loud, heart-stopping wail that echoed through the trees. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. We ran, not knowing where, just away from that sound. But the forest seemed to shift around us, trapping us in a never-ending maze. Night fell again, and with it a sense of doom. We huddled together, too scared to sleep. The whispers were everywhere now, a chorus of voices that didn't sound quite human. "What do they want?" Jess sobbed. Sarah, once our rock, looked defeated. "There's a story," she said quietly, "about this forest. Something happened here, long ago. A tragedy that the trees remember." Her words sent chills down my spine. The shadows returned, more of them this time, circling our camp. We were too terrified to move. Then, in a moment of desperation, Sarah stood up. "We need to face it," she declared, her voice shaking. "Whatever it is, we can't let it control us." We stood with her, forming a circle. The shadows paused, as if surprised. We couldn't see them clearly, but we could feel their presence, heavy and suffocating. Sarah began to speak, her voice clear and strong. "We mean no harm. We're lost and scared, just like you were." The forest fell silent. The shadows seemed to hesitate. Then, one by one, they faded away. The whispers stopped. A ray of moonlight broke through the fog, revealing a path. Without a word, we followed it, not knowing if it was real or just another trick of the forest. Story number 3. I never liked camping, but here I was, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees that seemed too tall and too close. My friends thought it would be fun to share ghost stories around the campfire. I just wanted to roast marshmallows. The fire crackled, casting weird shadows that danced among the trees. It was Tim's idea to tell the scariest stories we knew. He loved that kind of stuff. I didn't, but I didn't want to seem scared. So I sat there, wrapped in my jacket, pretending to listen while the others took turns. When it was my turn, I mumbled some story about a haunted house. It was lame, but nobody seemed to mind. They were all too into their own tales, getting more and more intense with each one. That's when things started to get weird. The fire, which had been a comforting glow, suddenly flared up, sending embers flying everywhere. We all jumped back, yelling and trying to stomp out the little fires before they reached our tents. It was chaos, but we managed to get it under control. "Must have been the wind," someone said, but there wasn't any wind. We tried to laugh it off, but the mood had shifted. The stories stopped, and we sat there staring at the fire. That's when we heard the first crack. It sounded like a gunshot. We all froze, then turned to see a massive tree limb crashing to the ground, just inches from where Tim had been sitting. He was white as a sheet. "That could have killed me," he whispered. We should have packed up and left then, but we didn't. We told ourselves it was just a freak accident. We'd be careful, stay alert, and everything would be fine. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was listening to us, reacting to our stories. The night dragged on. Every sound made us jump. Every shadow seemed to move. We huddled closer to the fire, but it didn't feel safe anymore. It felt like a beacon, drawing attention to us. Then the whispers started. Soft at first, like leaves rustling. I thought I was imagining it. But then I saw the others looking around, uneasy. The whispers grew louder, surrounding us, coming from every direction. We couldn't make out any words, but it felt like they were talking about us. Panic set in. We grabbed our flashlights and shone them into the trees, but there was nothing there. Just darkness and the feeling of being watched. We decided to stick together. No more splitting up for any reason. Safety in numbers, right? But the forest didn't care. The whispers turned to moans, the shadows seemed to reach for us, and the fire flickered like it was alive. We were trapped in a nightmare, and the only way out was to wait for dawn. That's when the ground started to shake. It was subtle at first, a gentle vibration, but it grew stronger and stronger until we could barely stand. We clung to each other, eyes wide with terror, as the earth trembled beneath us. And then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The forest was silent. No whispers, no moans, just the crackling of the fire. We didn't dare move, didn't dare breathe. We waited, hearts pounding, for what felt like hours. When the sun finally rose, it was like waking from a nightmare. We packed up in silence, too shaken to talk about what had happened. We just wanted to get out of there, leave the whispering woods behind.